Welcome back to a Purring Wolverine, and tonight we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to show you how to do some simple tasks, and we're going to make sure we explain them for you thoroughly so that you cannot possibly get lost as we go through the building of a paper airplane, how to draw some polygons, and then how to cut said polygons out of paper. As you can see, I've gathered some supplies here for us to use. We have some paper. You can use any kind of paper. Here I've used construction paper. It's purple, which is my favorite color. But again, you could use any kind of paper. The kind of paper does not matter. Any paper will do. This is construction paper, but any paper you can use is good enough for a paper airplane. Some may say you want a proper 8 by 11. However, as long as you have something vaguely in this proportion, it will work. Again, I have an 8 by 11 piece of construction paper, but you could use any sort of paper. Does not have to be construction paper. And you could have anything that is vaguely in this ratio. In order to assist with your folding, it is often good to have a hard-edged implement. It does not matter what that implement is, and to prove that point, I have brought with us here our Stanley leveler. This leveler has a hard edge. Again, you're looking for a hard edge to help with your folds. Make sure the creases are strong. Anything with a crease that you're making, you're going to want to reinforce that crease with your hard edge. And you can use anything for your hard edge. Here we have the Stanley leveler / stud finder. The Stanley stud finder will work as our hard edge to help with our creases. This has a button on the right. I've removed the batteries. The batteries have a frustrating beep that does not find itself suitable for ASMR. However, we have this button here on our hard-edged Stanley implement. Your first fold for the paper airplane will be a lengthwise fold. The length is the longer side of the paper. The longer side here, which is your length, is how we're going to fold the paper lengthwise. The lengthwise fold will be a fold that comes down the center of the page, bisecting the page lengthwise. This fold is most easily made by lining up the outer corners of the page with each other over the top before initiating the crease on the fold. Simply fold the paper over. Notice that while the folder paper is bent, we do not have a crease initiated. This is a gradual fold that could be undone rather simply. If we wanted to flip the page over, we could. Again, we have our construction paper here, and we will initiate a lengthwise fold down the middle, bringing each corner to each opposite corner, making sure they align on both the bottom and top before you can press down with your hand in order to initiate the first fold. Make sure that your corners are aligned both on the top and the bottom before pushing down to initiate your first fold. Your hard edge will come into assistance here, making sure that that crease is strong. Perfect. Now that you've initiated your lengthwise fold, you can unfold the paper. You might think to yourself, why have we just folded the paper if we are going to unfold the paper? Creases will be used in the future. This crease will be used in the future So again, you've initiated your lengthwise fold and flattened it with your straight-edged implement. You have then opened the page. Alright, I see some of you out here are a little bit confused, perhaps thinking I am moving too quickly, so we will indeed slow down for you. Just as a brief summary, your lengthwise fold down the middle will be used for a crease later on in the build. You're going to want to take the top corners. What are the top corners? You can decide the top corners, but typically the corners that are considered top are the corners that are furthest away from you. If you were to pick up this creased construction paper as if it were a pamphlet, you would see that the top edges are the furthest away from me. Take your top corners and you'll fold them each one at a time individually towards this center crease, a convenient demarcation point for the fold. Again, we are going to take each top corner of the paper and fold it down, creating a small triangle as it reaches the center line. As you approach the center line, make sure you lock in that paper lengthwise, and you can press down for an initial crease. As you like this crease, make sure you take your hard-edged implement and reinforce the crease. Repeat this on the opposite side. Again, we're looking to make a symmetrical shape, meaning we'll need to take the top left corner of your page, in this case our construction paper. You'll take the top left of your paper and fold it to match now the opposite side. Again, you'll want to keep this as symmetrical as possible, and when you have the paper lined and creased properly, push down to form the initial crease. As you like the crease and as you approve of it, you can take your straight-edged implement and reinforce the crease. If you want to press the button a few times whilst doing so, please feel free. Perfect. You have now the beginnings of your paper airplane. We have folded the top two corners down to the center piece. We now want to repeat this gesture again. Now, you might say, there are no top corners. How can we fold them down? Well, in this case, we are going to take the topmost corner and fold it similarly down to the halfway line. This fold will be made more difficult for the construction paper, but you'll be rewarded in the final build with rigidity. Again, bring this top corner to the center line, and as you make sure that your line is good and you are aligned with the center crease from the earlier fold, please push down. Ta-da! We have taken the top left corner, which was previously here, and folded it over to the center line, ensuring to make one long line connected with the center line. If you are happy with your fold and crease, please take your straight-edged implement and reinforce your crease. Now that you've taken the top left corner and folded it down, we're going to look for you to take the top right corner and similarly fold it into this line, just to make a symmetrical piece. If you started with this top right corner previously, you would now be on the top left corner, which would be approximately here, taking that to fold to the center line. Here we are, though, on our right side, since we started on the left, and you will take your page and fold it down to the center line. Attempt to maintain the point of this page as well as you can, as this will help your plane's aerodynamics in the future. When you are happy with the crease, push down. And when you have placed your initial crease, use your hard, straight-edged implement to reinforce the crease. You may notice that this particular airplane has not lined up perfectly symmetrically. This is okay. Airplanes do not need to be perfectly symmetrical in the paper airplane for fun building aviation world. You've now reinforced your creases and built what almost looks like a flat plane. However, flat planes do not fly, so let's attempt to add some dimension to this plane. We are going to now reutilize the crease we folded in the very beginning. If you remember, our first fold was a lengthwise fold. The lengthwise fold was down the middle and provided us a guideline for our subsequent corner folds. Now that our second corner fold has been completed on each side, we can move on to a fold reinforcing the center crease line. Due to the excess folds and the additional weight of the paper, you may find it necessary to reinforce your crease. Finally, we are going to take the top edge of our newly created aeroplane triangle and fold it down to the bottom edge. Defining the top edge is a bit arbitrary here, as we could easily turn the page over and make the top edge the bottom edge. However, for our purposes, we will define the top edge as having a broken line due to the top of the paper starting here. Now, fold your top edge down, having this convenient flat section line up with the bottom of the paper. This will be a convenient fold and will be the last fold for this side of the plane. Bring this fold down, line it up with the corner, and crease down. This fold, however, we are not going to straight edge because we want this to flare. There, perfect. Now we will repeat this on the opposite side. Make sure to tuck in your wing so that it does not get destroyed or damaged. Again, take the top level or the broken line and fold the top of your page down to the bottom of your page to create the second and final wing. Line up your corners, and when you feel satisfied, feel free to press in and make your crease. In this scenario again, we are going to leave this crease simply hand creased. Finally, you may lift your airplane and unfurl its wings to ensure a flat line. You now have a paper airplane. This particular paper airplane is a bit floppy. You could choose to tape, staple, glue, or otherwise secure this paper airplane to make a tight signature. Some would fold the wings further down the baseline to create a larger wing profile. Although too large of a wing profile and you would simply be back to an open piece of paper. However, if you keep the plane like this, it will still fly due to your sharp folds and creases. This paper airplane was again made with construction paper, but you could make yours out of any paper, and anything could be used for your straight edge or your securing device at the end. Do not fret about the individual steps, as the overall goal is simply to make a paper plane that will fly through the air. Next up, we have the creation of polygons. In order to draw polygons, you'll need to gather some additional tools. Another piece of paper, although I suppose you could simply unfold your paper airplane. Where's the fun in that? Once you have secured another piece of paper, you will also need a writing implement. In this case, we have a pencil. You could choose any sort of writing implement, from pencil to pen to marker. Additionally, it assists you greatly to have a straight-edged implement. Previously, for the paper airplane, we were using a hard-edged implement in our stud finder. Now we simply need a straight-edged element, so we will use the edge of this $2 bill. The first polygon we will learn how to draw is a triangle, which has 3 sides. Triangles, again having 3 sides, will require you to draw 3 different lines that ultimately connect with each other, encapsulating a space. The easiest way to do this will be to start with any straight line. The triangle will ultimately be 2 of these edges with 1 line across to create the 3rd line. If you would like, you could simply use both of the edges of your square implement. However, for this demonstration, we will assume that only 1 edge of your discovered implement is straight, and we will thus be using only the 1 edge to create our triangle and future polygons. Again, the triangle with the base word try will have 3 sides. For the first line, we will use our straight edge, in this case a $2 bill, to create a line. Indeed. In order to create the triangle, you will need to create 2 additional lines. Now, there are many types of triangles that you could create by shifting how these next 2 lines are drawn, but we will simply draw whatever triangle the shapes create for us. As you can see, this is the 2nd line of the triangle, which means we have 1 line left to complete the triangle. You may find your eyes already completing the shape of the triangle, but we will complete it for you. First, place the tip of your pencil on the termination of the 1st or 2nd line so that you can line up your straight edge a bit easier. When your straight edge has been aligned, simply take the pencil and move it across the page until you have reached the opposite line. Now that you have completed the polygon, you have created your first triangle. Perfect. Let's label this triangle. You don't have to label your triangle. However, this is our triangle that we have labeled. You can tell it's a triangle because it has 3 sides. The next polygon that I want you to experiment with is the creation of a rectangle. You might want to create a square at this stage, Squares, however, require a level of precision that you may not be able to achieve with any old straight edge that you have found locally. So for this example, we will be referring to our next polygon only as a rectangle. A rectangle, much like a square, has 4 sides. This first side is the easy one to draw, as there is no need for any additional reference points. The rectangle will need 4 sides. As you'll remember previously, our triangle had 3 sides. This rectangle is going to need 4 sides. So we can take our pencil and place it on the end line to ensure a smooth transition. And again, line up. In this case, I will cheat and use my squared edge of the bill to create a squared edge for me to create the second line of my rectangle. And as you can see, this rectangle, which will eventually have 4 lines, currently has 2 lines. Your eye may already, even with 2 lines, be completing the 3rd and 4th line. However, we will do so for you with this pencil. Now, in this scenario, it can get a bit tricky to be perfect with your edges. Perfection is, of course, not a requirement of this particular exercise, so we will simply do our best while creating the 3rd line to match the length of our 2nd line. We now have 3 of our 4 lines for our rectangle, and it is a simple matter of aligning your straight edge after placing your pencil at the termination point of either your 2nd or 3rd line to the edge of your polygon and dragging the pencil across the paper to complete the image. Now, as we remove our $2 bill, you will see we have created a rectangle. Let's label this rectangle. Interestingly, rectangles, which have 4 sides, share much in common with the rhombus. The rhombus is similar to a rectangle or a square, but pushed to its side. How can you create a rhombus? First, you'll start by creating any old straight line. Indeed, any straight line will do. Now, instead of creating this next line at a attempted 90-degree angle to create a rectangle, our next line will be drawn at any sort of oblique angle. However, it is important to note that being too angled can create a bit of a stilted effect. Not that that is a problem, but it can be undesirable at times. Remember, perfection is not a requirement of this exercise, so the easiest way for you to line up one line with another line is to simply have your straight-edged implement aligned with your original angled line, place your pencil at the termination point, and slide the straight edge across until it touches. This may not be perfect, but again, it does not need to be perfect, and draw your line down. Finally, to complete the rhombus, you will draw the bottom line using the technique we have used already with the triangle and the rectangle. Place your pencil at the termination point of either of these lines, place your straight edge across, and complete the polygon. And now you have created a rhombus. This feels like a spelling error to me, but it has been a long time since I have spelled the word rhombus. You might be thinking to yourself, if we have a 3-sided triangle and a 4-sided rectangle and rhombus, might there be a 5-sided polygon? And of course, you would be correct. there is a 5-sided polygon known as a pentagon. To create your pentagon, you're going to want to start with any old straight line. You might be starting to catch on at this point that most polygons begin with a straight line, and this is true. The vast majority do. In order to continue your pentagon, you will want to create an angled line, almost as if you are creating a rhombus, although future steps will be different. Select either endpoint of your original line, place the pencil and your straight edge, and create a new line of equal distance at an angle. This process you will attempt to repeat and attempt to match as close as you can this angle, assuming you are matching the angle drawn here. The goal is within 5 pieces to return back to the original line. This can often get a little bit sloppy, but again, perfection is not the goal. Line up your straight edge after placing your pencil on a termination line and draw the third line. At this point, we can make a better assertion as to how to finish our pentagon. As you can see, we now have a bottom point and a top point, along with one side of our pentagon home. This creates an easy lineup for us to place our pencil at the end point, but be looking at the assumed termination line based on an existing point. Once you have placed your straight edge, you can draw the line out to the edge of that pentagon. Now, the final line is simply connecting your pentagon's 2 remaining points. Not perfect, but good enough. A 5-sided pentagon. Why stop there, I hear you say? If we could do 5 sides, why not 6? Or 7? Or even 8? And indeed, there are polygons that continue until you have so many sides that you are nearly drawing a circle. However, we will stop at 5 sides, since the goal of this tutorial is to remain simple in drawing basic polygons, such as the triangle, rectangle, rhombus, or pentagon. Next, we will focus on removing these polygons from the paper that they are currently drawn upon. In order to complete this final step, you'll want to retain your paper with polygons from the previous step and acquire a pair of scissors. This pair of scissors can be any type of scissors, although I would not suggest using your household's kitchen scissors, as you will get in trouble if you do so. Once you have your scissors, begin by making a few test cuts in the page to prepare yourself. It would be embarrassing to be caught off guard when you begin cutting and miscut one of your polygons. Simply choose a corner that is not marked with a polygon and attempt a sample cut. Perhaps a second. Ultimately, our cuts will be removing the polygons from the page. It may behoove you to attempt a cut that will do such a thing in microcosm. Once you feel you have practiced cutting and you have a hang of the scissors, Bring an initial rough cut to the edge of the first polygon that you would attempt to remove from its paper housing. This rough cut is an attempt to cross over one of the corners without necessarily matching either line. This will give you a convenient starting point. If you would like, you could continue this cut out, assuming it does not interrupt any other polygons, to the edge of the page, removing any excess paper. As you can see, we have now removed the excess paper from the edge of our pentagon and are prepared to cut along our previously drawn pencil line that we can now use as a guideline. Take your scissors. I have them here between my thumb and forefinger, although some folks prefer to use middle and ring finger for this level of control. Make sure that your scissors are open wide, but not too wide as to stress your fingers out. Find the corner of your pentagon, or whichever polygon you have chosen to begin with, and rotate the scissors until you can barely see at the base of the scissors the beginning line, and cut. As you can see, we'll be cutting just along the line which removes the line from the page. If you would like, you can choose to angle the scissors slightly differently from the very start to keep that edge in outline your polygon in pencil, pen, or marker relief. Now that you have made the first cut, the second cut should come slightly easier. Again, line up your nexus point of your scissors where they touch each other at the base and cut along the line. Perfect. You've now cut two sides of your five-sided pentagon. As needed, rotate your paper, holding always the chunk that has the pentagon you are looking to cut out, or whichever polygon you have chosen first. Now that we've removed two sides, the third side can be a little tricky, but should be along a similar vein in terms of your trims. At this stage, you may again decide to remove excess paper from the trim in order to give yourself some freedom with cutting. Be sure when cutting this excess out to not clip any of your other polygons. These cuts can be rough and do not need to be precision cuts. Continuing with our pentagon, we only have two sides remaining to cut. We can place our scissors on the open edge and cut along the fourth side of our five sides to nearly free our pentagon. You might be tempted to simply pull or rip from here, however that will leave you with a sloppy edge. My suggestion here, again, is cut off the excess trim to the corner that you are looking to cut across. Here, we will attempt an advanced maneuver, which is to run this external cut directly into the final line. In order to do this, we must make sure that this cut across the bottom is bisected by our vertical cut. Here we are cutting vertically in, making sure that we at least get that last little bit, as you'll see by this edge falling here. Then we can continue the cut until the pentagon itself falls free from the paper. As you can see, if you remove the scrap, we are left with a pentagon. The pentagon is a good shape to remove first with its five sides and also being the last that we created. Removing the rhombus will require slightly less work, as it only has 4 sides. However, the angles can prove to be tricky. Here, we will start with some edge and attempt again the advanced maneuver of lining our first cut along the top of our polygon. Let's continue with the rhombus using our advanced technique. Don't worry if you are feeling frustrated or lost with this cutting technique. We'll return to our introductory technique for the rectangle and triangle. With any polygons that are close to each other, you might be tempted to cut all the way through in order to ensure the first polygon has a clean cut. This, however, would compromise any polygons that are in your way, so please be sure to watch your cuts. With the final cut of the rhombus remaining, we will attempt the final advanced cut of this tutorial. This scenario may occur if you do not properly finish out your cuts at the end of any polygon. The smallest of remains connects the page. In this situation, and perhaps this situation only, it might be acceptable to take this polygon and detach it from the page via force. What remains is our final 2 polygons. In order to remove these polygons, we are going to use our beginner technique. The beginner technique again involves cutting at an angle that does not risk your initial polygon, but simply touches one edge or one corner, more specifically of that polygon, in a relatively close fashion. This excess can be safely trimmed away without putting your polygon at risk, leaving you with a very easy first cut on the corner of your polygon, in this case our triangle. Line up the connection point of your scissors with the edge of that triangle and simply cut along the line. This can simply be repeated for the opposite side in order to make that cut as well. If you overcut either one, you'll now be able to make another safe cut to remove the excess, leaving you with an easy final cut to remove your triangle from your paper. For our final polygon, we will be removing the rectangle from our construction paper using the safe method, cutting at a safe angle, simply approaching but not attempting to truly touch or really bisect the corner of the rectangle. We can continue this cut to the edge to safely remove the excess, providing us with an easy first cut down the rectangle line. If you find yourself midway through a cut and needing to realign or reopen your scissors, do not pull your hand backwards. Simply slide forward and open the scissors, allowing yourself to make another straightforward cut and complete that line. Removing any excess paper should again make further cuts easier for you. And you can take the second edge of the rectangle out of the paper. Repeat for your third edge. And finally, For your last step of your polygon removal process, cut the final edge, the fourth piece of this particular rectangle, on whatever polygon you are working on at the moment, and free it from the paper. After removing any excess scraps from your extraction, you'll find that you are left with your 4 polygons, your triangle, your rectangle, your rhombus, and your pentagon. And that will conclude today's tutorial of how to do simple things like creating and cutting out polygons and folding a paper airplane. I hope you found this relaxing, and we'll see you next time on a Purring Wolverine. Good night.